Hi everyone, remember the Worlds commentary I did with Zach just a while back? Well, Zach is in my meta, and one of the big benefits of having such a great player in your meta is that you get to bounce ideas about deck building, and that actually allows you to refine your ideas or even expose yourself to new combinations that you haven't thought of before. Now, I've always known that KEEGAN lane has great potential. After all, it's like Marcus Petty, isn't it? Well, Zach just gave me a pretty good idea. What if you played KEEGAN lane in a super modernism style deck? So it's ambient that attempts to rush out agendas behind cheap binary and the run ice before the runner even has time to set up. And by the time they're set up, your KEEGAN lane starts trashing all the stuff if they decide to run through Data Ravens. Blacklist makes KEEGAN lane doubly effective, meaning that they cannot use their clone chips to recur whatever you get that was trashed. And team sponsorship allows you to recur KEEGAN lanes, which is very important because KEEGAN lanes are one use, just like Marcus Petty. As such, you would like as many of them as possible. So I thought this was a very good idea and was one worth trying. So I'm now up against James, who is playing his usual Apocalypse Max deck. Well, ain't that a pain? Well, I do find an Architect in my opening hand, so I keep it and I immediately place the Architect on R&D, which fires immediately, allowing me to install stuff. Here, the pack campaign was kind of a no-brainer. There were not many agendas on R&D, so I could take my time with the game. More importantly, I wanted to solidify my centrals to ensure that he wasn't getting anywhere anytime soon. I placed the wraparound not on the pair campaign but on a new server so that I can score an Astro script should it come my way in the future. He finds my KEEGAN lane and I think he trashes it here, which is a pretty good choice for someone running Account Siphon. That pretty much bankrupts him though. This is not where he wants to be against a deck that is fierce from the get-go, such as NBN. And unfortunately, I really should have protected the pet because it now gets trashed with the imp. I really do need that money. So it's an okay start for me. I do leak one card off the top of R&D, but he cannot imp it because he's already used his imp, so I get to see my Eli. The main priority here is to get credits to rest the Eli on R&D because I can be sure he's going to run through it next turn. But first, drawing with near Hub's ability and then clicking for credits allows me to get my game going quicker. Unfortunately, I enabled his game on because he does have a Queen's Gambit and he gambits my Jackson. So that's a bit unfortunate, but well, so be it. Then I find a Sweet Sweet. Not very good to use right now, for obvious reasons. And yes, I make the huge mistake of not going for the Astro script in the remote. What was I thinking? I definitely should be placing the Astro script in the remote. It's behind a wraparound, it's so safe. I think I was worried about DDoS at this point, but oh, and Account Siphon as well. Yes, Account Siphon will be very crippling, no doubt, because if he siphons me at this point, I will only have enough money to rest a wraparound, not enough money to score the Astro next turn, so that's pretty bad. And anyway, he did have a David, so the Astro would have been stolen had I went for it. But you just have to rush it out. Now, at this point, I can actually Biotic label the Astro script out, but I decide not to. I actually went for a very greedy play here. I went for the team sponsorship, planning to score the Astro next turn. If I do that, I'll be able to trigger team sponsorship to get KEEGAN lane back, which will be very, very important. Because I know he's running Account Siphon, I need to defend against his tags. And that's exactly what I plan to do, as long as he doesn't force me to rest ice. If he does, I'll be in a painful place because I cannot play Biotic label. This is worse though. He siphons me. That is just about as bad as it can get. So I do rest the Enigma, but he can easily get through because he has a combination of Ether and David. So this is very oppressive. He managed to get David and Ether out at such an early opportunity, which just completely chews through all my binary ice. Even Architect doesn't stand up very well against it. I'm down to 0 credits now. He's pretty rich. He might be tagged, but I do not have any KEEGAN lanes in hand. He sniped the only one I had. If I were able to place a KEEGAN lane in the remote to bait a run there, I could easily blow up his Ether and that would send him very far back. Or blow up his David, that would work as well. None of that. So now I'm down to 0 credits. I'm in a very painful spot. What do I do here? the obvious move is to click for 3 credits, but then I'll have to trash something. I decided to trash the wraparound because it's useless against David. I could double stack the remote with double wraparound. I think that would be a huge pain for my opponent, but I don't have too many items that can bait remote runs. I think this was a mistake. Perhaps I really should have placed double wraparound on the remote. In any case, because I rest the wraparound on the remote, I couldn't defend R&D, and an Eli hits the archives, which is pretty bad. I do need those Elis to defend my centrals. Elis and architects are the most taxing eyes I have against Max, and without them I'm just going to completely fall. So this is actually a very notable mistake by me. I should not have placed the Enigma on HQ. It's pretty bad, and of course I should have scored the Astro when I had the chance. Now that I'm broke, I cannot score the Astro. So 2 big mistakes. The Enigma is useless as HQ Ice because it doesn't tax. He can easily run through it for 1 credit by siphoning last click. What I really should be doing is placing Elis and Architects on HQ and R&D, even wraparounds to tax David. Enigma should go on the remote because Ether cannot chew through Enigmas. So that's a big mistake on my part that's going to cause me a lot of problems. I do rest the Eli on R&D, keeps me safe for now, and is putting quite a bit of tax on his credits. He cannot afford to keep running through R&D like that. And I click for credits here, hoping to hedge fund next turn. Pretty straightforward. I definitely should not trash the Eli at this point, but I do not wish to trash any of the other cards on my hand, so I trash the Enigma. Again, the Enigma really should go on the remote. It's the best defense against a Poker Max. He runs for my Jackson here, and here I make a big mistake. I reshuffle Sweet, Team Sponsorship, and Pair Campaign. Why is this a mistake? I'll leave you to figure it out. You will find out later as the game progresses. But this was a huge mistake that that knowing what his deck contains, I should have been more careful about what I Jackson back. Right, well, it's here. He plays Immolation Script to trash my Eli. Remember the Eli that he imped away? That's going to come back to bite me. That is why I should have Jackson away, knowing he plays Immolation Script. Of course, against most other opponents, I don't know their deck, I wouldn't be able to prepare for this. But against this particular variant of Max, I really should have reshuffled my Eli. I mean, thickening my R&D with more Elis definitely helps as well, so that I can defend my centrals better. As a result, I'm getting Keyhole to Oblivion. I lose a Global Food, which by the way is one of my agendas. I don't play Breaking News in this deck. This is meant as more of a deck that wants to score 3 agendas instead of 4 agendas. If I want to score 4 agendas with Breaking News of 15 minutes, at that point I might as well just play Fast Advance instead. Since I want to score the bigger agendas behind secure remotes, I can't afford to play Global Food, and that should hopefully make it hard for my opponent as he still has to score 4 agendas to win with a lower agenda density. Unfortunately, since he's so rich, he can afford to keyhole multiple times, this time trashing a KEEGAN. Pretty painful. Now 2 KEEGANs hit the heap, and he's still tagged, so I would really like to use those KEEGANs against him. Not seeing them though, but I finally do get my way in the form of Astrobiotics. The Biotic label allowed me to score the all-important agenda that allows me to recur KEEGAN lane with team sponsorship now that I actually have money to use the Biotic label. So that's a slip out on my opponent. Not being able to credit lock me meant that I can fast advance the Astro, and from now on I can use shipment from Sansan to fast advance any additional Astros I hit. And he cannot lock my R&D because KEEGAN lane is on R&D. So R&D is safe. HQ is not that safe, but I can afford to go down to 0 credits. Credits are not important anymore because if I top deck an Astro, I'm scoring it from 0 credits. He immolates my 3rd Eli, which is a huge pain. Huge pain. But then I see the Data Raven, which conveniently immediately goes on R&D. He also clears his tags because he knows that there is a KEEGAN lane on R&D. So this is very good for me. Even though I've lost all my Elis, I have a Data Raven on R&D, and that puts a complete lock on the R&D server. If he chooses to go past the R&D, I will get a trash of my choice. And timing issues here, I need to res the KEEGAN lane before he decides whether he wants to encounter the Raven or not. Or rather, what he does during encounter. Because after the encounter, I do not have a window to res cards. I can use KEEGAN's trash ability, but not resing KEEGAN himself. So at this point, I'm just basically waiting for an Astro. I could Shipment fast advance the Bill with the Astro token, not a good idea. For obvious reasons. He chalks up credits, and this buys me more time to dig through my deck to find the all-important Astro script. I know agendas are more or less safe in my hand, unless he plays Wanton Destruction. That could be a worry. He is on a lot of credits right now. But I think it's more important for me to solidify my board state now, hence I go for the Sweet Sweep. With that many credits, I can threaten the second Biotic Labor, but he has other plans. With his 19 credits, he plays a Fem from hand, all too worth it to bypass my Data Raven. Since he has no more tags left from the earlier account siphon because he diligently cleared them, I was at a loss. My KEEGAN lane is useless. He mills an Astro script. Oh dear, that server only cost him 2 credits to get through. He cannot trash the KEEGAN during his run, because it's a keyhole run, but it doesn't matter, because he finds 2 agendas for the win. From this game, I observed that this deck simply felt like a weaker version of Astrobiotics. I'm not sure if you felt the same way. Basically, the only thing I got going that game for me was the Astro script that I eventually scored with Biotic Labor. And that is exactly what Astrobiotics does. With fewer with fewer Biotic Labors and Sensei City Grids in my deck, this combo will be pulled off less often, less consistently, making it a worse deck. And the rest of my deck just doesn't hold up. KEEGAN lane is good in theory, but in practice has far too many limitations, many of which you don't really feel until you actually play with that card. He is easily trashable, as you saw. My opponent trashed 2 copies of KEEGAN lane. How was I supposed to defend my HQ or R&D that way? And even when I finally got it going via team sponsorship, I could only protect 1 server. And even after that, that is completely reliant on the runner not having any means of burning down my Data Raven, or in this case, bypassing it completely with Femme Fatale, which is not very often played today. It's a very good shout, and definitely caught me off guard and was the main reason I lost, because I couldn't defend against the keyhole threat. If I could stabilize, I could collect Astro scripts in hand and begin fast advancing them, I might have had a chance. Not this game. Which brings me to Immolation Script, a card that I underrated, or I wouldn't say underrated, I completely wrote off, because there were too many factors that worked against it. But this Apocalypse Max deck is the exact perfect breeding ground for Immolation to take place. You want a deck that runs Imp and Keyhole, because these are the cards that can most reliably trash Ice and really punish any corp that plays 3 copies of a certain Ice, such as Eli. Yep, Eli basically. You also want a runner deck that doesn't apply too much Archives pressure, which comes in the form of Noise. Noise usually is thought to be the best ID to use Immolation script in, simply because the random mill will almost always get some Ice, which you can then immolate. The problem with that is, against Noise, most good corps will simply ice up Archives. At that point, is it really that worth it to go for the Immolation script run? You have to pay through the taxing Archives Ice, and at the end of the day, they might just Jackson those Ice back after all your hard work. Finally, another good reason to run Immolation script in this deck is that there's no Parasite or Data Sucker in this deck, max deck, which means that to destroy very nasty Ice such as Turings or Toll Booths, you have to rely on finding your singleton Spoon. If you don't even run Spoon, Immolation script is your next best bet. But it's otherwise a very good run event actually. It has shown to be rather impactful the few times that both James and I have playtested Apocalypse Max. Firstly, most people don't see the Immolation script running, and secondly, even if they do, their only defense really is Jackson Howard. And that's assuming there's a Jackson on the table in the first place, which obviously wasn't the case this game. I misplayed that on my part, and I deserve to lose my Eli's for that, but otherwise, there's really not much you can do if it's a surprise tech and it works very well. So that's all I have for this game. Thanks for watching Happy Net Running. Goodbye.